Hello, hello. Welcome to the live Q&A that I am now hosting about once a month. And what we do here is answer questions about podcasting for business owners. So usually I'm working with financial professionals, whether they be a financial advisor, a money coach, a business coach. I've worked with a profit coach and various real estate investors, CPAs, lots of folks in the financial space. But a lot of this advice pertains to all kinds of business owners, especially if you have what I call a trust based business. In other words, your people really have to trust you to become clients. So, a lot of times that happens in the medical space, in any kind of like health and wellness niche. And then also, I see a lot of transfer in this space into from finances into the therapy space. So, lots of trauma informed therapy, lots of financial therapy. Some people still don't know that's a thing. It's a really, really interesting space to be in. So, we are going to get started. I am not actually planning on keeping you all for the full hour. So, we are going to just dive in. I've got 5 questions lined up that were submitted to me ahead of time. If you are watching this live and you are on LinkedIn or YouTube, you absolutely may go ahead and make a comment. I am going to log into those sites so that hopefully I can see your comment over there. In the future, if you want to join me inside the platform where you can actually just comment directly to me and submit your questions live, I do have a registration link up when I post about these events. So I'm going to look for you all here on LinkedIn right now. Let's see. Okay. Live. Awesome. Everything looks good there. Fantastic. Okay. I do see a couple folks are watching on LinkedIn, and I also see a few on YouTube. So, again, if you comment on those platforms, it will take me a minute to kind of hop over and look for your comment as opposed to it popping up in here. So, let's dive straight in and answer the first question of the day. The question that was submitted to me is, how do I pick topics for my podcast, of course, that attract the right clients and not just random listeners? So, this is the perfect train of thought for business owners and a really, really important place to start when you are creating your podcast. But if you've already launched your show, it's okay. You can always rework your focus, your niche, your strategy for upcoming episodes. That's the beautiful thing about podcasting is that it is very fluid and you can rebrand, you can refocus, you can literally announce to your listeners and followers that, hey, we're going this direction. So most often people do not niche down far enough and speak direct enough to the topics that they should be that would actually attract people into their business. Sorry, hang on. I am looking a little bit here on YouTube. Okay, let's get in here. Nice. Okay. Okay, now I can hear and see myself on YouTube, which also means that I can see your comments. Perfect. Okay. how do you pick the right topics for your business that will attract the right clients? So that's where we are at the moment. When you are mapping out topics, especially for solo episodes, typically I'm recommending that solo episodes, or even if you can assign a topic to a conversation, maybe between you and a guest or between you and a co host, you want to think about issues that your exact client, the perfect client for you, right? Like, not just someone that's like, oh, yes, you would take them as a client just because you're, needing to boost revenue or whatever is the deal. But someone who is absolutely perfect, right? Like the perfect business situation. They are happy to pay your rates. They qualify as far as like assets under management, the amount that they would be bringing to your business or whatever it is. You think about issues that they are facing custom to them based on their life stage, right? So they facing sandwich generation issues right now where they're working with aging parents and raising a family? Are they facing estate planning issues as their parents are aging? And so, in that case, maybe it would be useful to have an estate attorney come on your show and address some of these topics. There are so many life stage concerns that when one of your ideal clients is going through that, they are absolutely desperate for those answers and for that help. Even if, like I use the option for estate planning, even if you're not the estate planning attorney and you are, in the financial space in any way, and that work that they would do with an estate attorney would affect their investments, their next real estate purchase, how and when and if they can pay for college for their kids, right? Like some of those life stage things really affect a, a waterfall of decisions that would come after that. So, you, as the expert in your lane, can invite people and create conversations around topics that your ideal customer is also facing, right? So, like, don't be afraid to introduce topics that maybe you're not that comfortable with, but you know an amazing expert who is. And so you're connecting those listeners with like the perfect person to help them with where they're at now. And you might be thinking, okay, but how does that draw them in as clients for me? Well, the key here is that you are the connector. You were the one who read their mind and connect them to that next expert, right? So when we, recommend a great book or introduce them to a friend or help them get a job or, introduce them to their attorney that they need or whatever it is, you are the connector in any of those situations. And the more often that you can make a recommendation that helps somebody, yeah, they're happy for the recommendation, but they remember you specifically and they cannot wait to listen to your next episode because you're going to have some other amazing helpful thing on, right? So that's where you want to just really get into their heads, do some research around like age, location, demographics, concerns for that group of people, through conversations of clients you already have. Ask them kind of what's going on in their life and how can you know, produce topics that would continue to help them. And typically, those topics that will continue to help your existing clients are also going to attract people that are just like them, which is what we want for our businesses, right? So, that is how you do it. And I do have a free resource available to help you with these topics. And let me see, it is the script starter kit. I can see if I can share my screen here. Just a sec, and I'll show you exactly where it is on my website. I haven't done this part before. How do you screen share? That might be kind of fun. I'm seeing interesting things, but not a screen share option. Hmm. Okay, maybe I can't screen share. I do not know how to do that on this particular platform. There we go, folks. See, you don't have to know what's going on. You just learn as you go. Still looking, just a sec. I don't see anything. Okay, that's all right. It is called the Script Starter Kit, and it's at podcastabundance.com. And you can either go to resources or you can just type podcastabundance.com/script starter kit. So maybe you're saying, I don't want to script my podcast episodes. That's okay. Still go ahead and get that script starter kit. What it does is help you brainstorm topics. It helps you establish content pillars and organize your topics into those pillars so that you can see how often you're hitting which pillar in your business. Most businesses can and should have about 4 pillars of topics that they generally touch on, right? So it might be, um, family future planning, it might be estate planning, it might be retirement, and it might be like legacy planning, right? So those are like 4 broad financial areas that could be pillars. And then once you're in those pillars, you would have like niche topics within those pillars that you could be discussing or invite experts on about. So that worksheet, the script starter kit, helps you brainstorm the things, recognize and write down frequently asked questions that you're getting a lot, which those are great episodes for your audience. Establish all of those topics organized under pillars. And then there's even space for you to pick your favorites and start mapping out what those episodes would be about. And then where the script piece comes in is there is like a bonus page to that to show you how to use AI actually to script your episodes with custom prompts and custom uh, details inside ChatGPT. And here's a little secret: I actually do script my solo episodes and a lot of my intros to my guests using AI. And I bet you can't tell that it is AI. I bet it sounds like me. And that there is the key. So, if you have more questions about how to pick topics that will attract the exact ideal client for your business, check out the script starter kit on podcastabundance.com. Work through that. If you get stuck, reach out to me and I will continue to help walk you through it or give you custom advice depending on where you're getting stuck. Okay. Question number 2. What's the best way to sound like an expert and make sales, but not be salesy? Okay. Okay. So you are, um, obviously like using your podcast to make sales for your business, but you're worried about feeling salesy. So I would challenge you, and maybe this is coming from more of like a deeper belief that if you ask for the sale or tell people what your offer is, that's feels bad. And so there is some mindset work to be done around that. If your service or things that you're selling actually solve people's problems and help people, then you should not feel bad at all for offering that help, right? In exchange for payment, of course, but that is a sale. So when you break it down in this way that, they're buying something that solves their problem, like my service is helping them. And if you can't say that with confidence, or if you don't believe that, then that's an indication of a little bit more mindset work that needs to be done, and or tweaking what you're selling so that you can make that statement confidently. As far as sounding like an expert or being that featured expert and making sales on a podcast, I I want to help you not make it so complicated. So, anytime you're on, whether you are guesting on someone else's show, you're doing something like this live, you're doing a solo episode of your own show, listeners tune in based on the title of the show and the title of the episode. If those two things sound enticing to them, they are tuning in. So, whatever the title is leading them to believe, you're in the position to support that belief. So, sure, they might be looking for credibility and trust and trying to decipher through the conversation how experienced you are or something like that. But, it all comes down to being a human, being natural, making mistakes, and not worrying so much about like impressing people, right? Be you. Whether you've been in business for 2 years and you're being featured as the expert, or if you've been in business for 20 years and you're being featured as the expert, the way you're going to connect with people is not by acting like an expert on that episode, right? It is by being natural, sharing real stories, um, sharing your perspective based on your experience, maybe with a few facts to back it up. But then when it comes to the sales part, you simply share what you do and how it helps people. You don't need to come at it through the lens of trying to convince them or trying to um, I don't know, gotcha them into making a sale, right? That's where it feels salesy. That's where you get that negative feeling. But if someone literally tells their audience why they think this way about it, and this study says this, and they're kind of like unpacking the facts around their perspective, and then they say, XYZ service of mine solves this problem, and we get to walk through this in my customized process together. Immediately you're like, oh, that sounds great. Yes, please. Let's walk through this customized process together. How much is it? Right. So that is how you sell on a podcast without being salesy and positioning yourself as the expert. So, again, typically when you're invited on as a guest, there is something that the host already sees in you and why they're having you on their show, right? So, maybe you are the person that they found online that specializes in a certain thing. Have a simple conversation with the host before the episode starts. Ask them, who's your audience? What would help them? Are there any gaps in your content that I could help fill? Maybe they've talked about estate planning, but they haven't talked about some other piece of financial planning. And that's where you really thrive. And since you're an expert in that, that a lot of people miss that. So that would be a great thing to bring to the table. And if it's your show and you're the host, people are already following expecting you to have expertise based on whatever your show's title is, whatever your business is, right? So, establishing expertise can be done on your own show through solo episodes, through providing recaps or previews of interviews where yes, you invited an expert on, but then you're sharing a separate little tidbit that is summarizing what that expert said and saying why you agree or disagree, and then weaving it into um, other true stories that you've seen. And you're kind of providing your perspective on that thing, right? So there are lots of ways to balance credibility with trust, position yourself as an expert, and make sales by just simply offering what you do and how you help people and then letting them know where to find it, right? And none of that feels salesy or slimy or weird or bad in any way. Okay. So if you continue to have questions around that, I want to direct you to the conversion blueprint that's on podcastabundance.com. So this one is at podcastabundance.com/podcast dash conversion dash blueprint. I believe you can also just get it at conversion dash blueprint as well. But that one helps you narrow down what your offer even is for your podcast, or like what you would go on someone else's podcast and offer to their audience. Typically, listeners of podcasts are not necessarily looking to buy your, let's just say, like $3,000 package immediately. They just met you, right? So they are typically looking for something that's a little free and easy and a quick win, kind of like this. If you went and downloaded this podcast conversion blueprint and you filled out the worksheet and you did the little homework, you are going to end up with a beautiful call to action that you can use whether you're a guest or a host on your show. And it really breaks it down and walks you through my craft formula. So that helps you connect with your listeners and guide them into your business so that they become paying clients. So, that again is the podcast conversion blueprint. And that can really help you, as the question stated, weave my expertise into an episode without sounding salesy. So, there you go, folks. All right, question number 3. We are flying through here. How long should each episode be so people actually listen all the way through? Dun, dun, dun. All right. So this is kind of a longer version of a question that I get all the time is how long should my episodes be? Um, and then the tweak here is that they're trying to make sure that people listen all the way through. Well, the catch here is that not only do they have to have the time once they hit play to not be interrupted, right? But also the topic and the goodies offered, the guest, the interview, whatever it is that's going on in the episode has to be delicious, like all the way through the podcast episode. If at any point they get bored, they're out, right? So it's up to you and your editing team to trim conversations that kind of wane a little bit midway through, pick them back up once the energy comes back, or maybe that you get back on topic if you did get off. And the other piece of that is structuring your show so that your ideal person, right? So thinking about your existing clients or some people that you would love to have as your client, think about their lifestyle and their schedule. So, how long could those episodes be for that ideal person to actually listen the whole way through. And, of course, it's well known at this point that we have short attention spans, but that doesn't mean that all of your episodes should just be 10 minutes long, right? My son, for example, has an hour and a half long soccer practice 3 nights a week. So I am consistently looking for these long form, deep conversations that help me think, that inspire me, that inform me about the world, and really expand my knowledge. So depending on my schedule, right, that is what's dictating how long I can sit there and listen to an episode. And I actually walk around the track while he's at practice just to like try to get some steps in. So you've got to think about, what is this ideal person doing and how can I fit my topic or conversation into a format that's realistic for you as the host, but then also enjoyable for your listeners. And you've got to find a happy medium there. So, one way to check, of course, is to keep an eye on your completion rate. Typically, folks are finding that inside your Apple Podcasts account. And not only are you going to see, listeners and followers and downloads and all of that stuff, but you'll see the percentage of people that actually complete your episodes. And if not, where they fall off. And that is going to differ based on how long the episodes are that you're posting. So I have had some clients before where they do some super short solo episodes and then they do some really long, like hour interviews. And we actually found that different audience members were listening to the two different types of content within the podcast. So there are some strategies there that once you learn that, you can make some adjustments. Some folks end up deciding to split that into two different shows so that the folks that listen to the 10-minute episodes can binge and obsess, and you're giving them on a silver platter everything that they want. And then in the other show, you have all of your long form content, long interviews, and that those folks can get everything that they want. But again, that's not always the solution. So you want to keep an eye on your stats, make one adjustment at a time, right? Do not just suddenly go, oh, okay, my interviews are doing great. Let's, change the length, book all interviews, no more solos, change the cover art, do this, do that. Like, no, 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 no. Too many changes, and you won't be able to track what people are drawn to and what's working and what changes even matter for your show. So, visibility, engagement, and leads matter in reverse order, right? So if you do something that is suddenly having people download your freebie or visit a sales page or register for your newsletter, then obviously, if you can track what that single thing was that you did that caused that, you want to lean into it. On the other hand, if you did something that, is creating engagement for your business and people are suddenly replying to your newsletter about the podcast episode, you would want to lean into that and learn what you did. Also recognizing, okay, these people are chatting back with me, but they aren't yet signing up for my service. So what's going on here? And let's experiment. How often and how many replies does it take back and forth for them to then decide to buy my program? So there's lots of thoughts around how long your episode should be and what you can tweak to figure out what you need to do there. So we almost answered this next question. How do I measure whether my podcast is helping my business grow? So I just alluded to that a little bit. The biggest thing to measure as a business owner is the traction in your business, right? We don't care about followers. We don't care about likes on your reels on social media that are cut from your podcast episode. I really care less about replies and things like that unless they're actually helping you tweak and improve. The metrics that matter for a business owner who's hosting a podcast are the pieces where someone is actually entering your business's ecosystem. So, signing up for a freebie, joining a newsletter list, signing up for a wait list. Somehow they are giving their name and email and kind of like opting in for you to be able to contact them. Maybe your funnel is positioned on social media in like a DM style thing. So if that's the case and people can literally buy out of your DMs, great. That is something you can measure. If your business isn't set up that way, then social media is just engagement and visibility, which is also important. But the step where people take to enter your business's ecosystem, which is typically joining a newsletter or downloading a freebie, which also makes them join the newsletter, that is typically how you're going to measure traction. Because from there, the curve or speed at which someone then buys your product or service is much shorter than if they were never on your newsletter in the first place. And that is because email is still one of the best ways to make sales. So many of the folks that are making sales from their podcast, what's really happening behind the scenes, and I'll go into this in detail during my webinar tomorrow online. So I will share the link to that soon. But what's happening behind the scenes is typically the podcast episodes and the call to action in the podcast are directing people into a freebie, some kind of opt in into the newsletter. And then they have a welcome sequence and nurture sequence, various timed emails that go out to those new email list subscribers. And eventually there is a sale made or a call booked, and then a sale made after that. So, that is how you measure if your podcast is really helping your business grow. And there is a way to keep track of this and measure this, whether you're using your podcast as a way to get new speaking opportunities, whether you are using the show to literally build your email list and build your customer list. You can track this with an ROI tracker. So, super clear, right? That's how you want to be with, anything that you name. So there is a podcast ROI tracker that I created that I use that is available for free on my website. It's at podcastabundance.com/ROI tracker. And the way that you use that, there are instructions in the file. There's even a video from me to you to tell you how to tweak this spreadsheet that I made for you. But basically, there are probably 50 things on there that add value into your business. And you get to go through and decide which ones are important to you and assign a value to each of those things. So if you get a speaking opportunity because you guested on a podcast or because you're hosting your own show, and that speaking opportunity pays you $5,000, you put $5,000 on that line. And then every time you get a speaking opportunity, you track that. And you're able to then recognize, like, oh, because I've had my podcast for a year, I've gotten 5 speaking opportunities worth $5,000 a piece. So the podcast has effectively given me ROI of $25,000, right? So The spreadsheet just makes that math really clear and simple and trackable. Whereas typically we forget about why something happened or why we got a gig or why we got invited on somebody else's show. Stuff like, you know, ring, ring, here's a client, and they heard you, discovered you on a podcast, don't typically happen until maybe 100 plus episodes or a year plus, 2 years plus of podcasting. Those are very long term occurrences. And the trust with that potential client, now that they're calling and just jumping straight into being a client, I mean, I could almost guarantee that they have either binge listened almost every episode or they've been following you for a really, really long time, just waiting and hoping for the right moment to be able to do the thing with you. So that's a very long term thing. But if you are tracking smaller events within your business, like email list growth, speaking opportunities, invitations on other people's podcasts, features on different websites as the podcast host, backlinks from other people's podcasts or other people's website pages. All kinds of things are ways that you can measure whether your podcast is actually helping your business. So again, that's at podcastabundance.com slash ROI dash tracker. Okay, fifth and final question today. What's the simplest setup for recording high quality episodes without using complicated tech? Okay, awesome. I will share with you my setup is super simple. Okay, I do work on an Apple computer, but I mean, you can do the same thing with PC. What I prefer is to have a USB plug-in microphone. This thing literally runs straight to the computer, plugs in the back. All I've got here is an on and off button. When I have it on or when I'm about to like enter something where I might be recording sound or whatever, you pick what the microphone is called and select that as your input sound device or sound input, whatever it is, and you speak into it. It's not complicated tech at all. Same thing with this camera. This is a webcam that was less than $150. It does offer up to 4K quality. Of course, that depends on platforms and internet speeds and how, what, why, when, where, all of those things. Right now, I'm showing that it's recording in 720 on this live. I know for a fact that when I'm recording on Riverside for podcast episodes, it typically jumps to 1080. But again, it's a webcam. It's always on. It plugs in directly with a USB to the back of my computer. And whether I'm live, whether I am recording with someone, I mentioned Riverside. That is an online platform made for high quality video and audio. So in there, or whether I'm on Zoom, I use all the same equipment there. So it's super uncomplicated, simple, and actually super affordable. So like I said, the webcam was less than 150 bucks, plugs in with USB. This microphone was probably less than $60 at the time. It is a Samsung Q2U, not Samsung, but Samson, like the biblical character that cut off all his hair and lost his strength, if you know that story. Or someone cut his hair. That's the actual story there. But this plugs in, like I said, just straight USB. There is no external power source to either of these items that I've shared with you. They derive their power from being plugged into the computer. And again, with USB, you could plug into a PC, a laptop, an Apple computer, I mean, whatever. And if you need, you could get like little, um, things like this to help you convert whatever you need to do. Easy peasy setup, very portable. I have had to move my setup or take things with me when I travel sometimes. Webcams are super tiny. This microphone I kept to the box. It's really small, fits easily in a suitcase. Um, you don't have to, invest a ton, buy this really fancy DSLR camera that you don't even know how to use, buy a $500 microphone. All of that stuff can be done later when you've seen the ROI on your tracker, when you have niched down perfectly with your topics and are attracting ideal clients consistently. Like, use simple, affordable, um, easy to plug in, almost like you can't do it wrong type uh, products to help you get started. And here I am 6 years in, and I'm still using these products. I don't see the necessity in upgrading at this time. So stick with that perspective, get some uh, technology that you are comfortable with. Maybe if it's something that you see on a creator's video that you really like, and go with that. One thing I would advise against is a Blue Yeti microphone. They aren't blue, they're typically black or white, and they're about this tall and they typically sit on the desk. Those are very, very popular in the creator space. And most people don't know, but they are meant for an in studio recording situation, like sound treated walls, floors, a very, very sturdy table, lots of fabric, lots of sound treatment everywhere, because those microphones pick up the sound of the wall. Okay, like, I'm not even kidding. Noise that you do not even realize the air makes around you, those microphones pick it up. So do not get a Blue Yeti microphone. Get something like this, or a dynamic microphone. Look that up, dynamic USB microphone. Buy one of those, and you can record almost anywhere. All right. So that sums up what's the simplest setup for recording high quality episodes without complicated tech. Okay, before you go, I want to make sure that you know, especially for the folks watching, there is a free webinar I'm hosting tomorrow. It's called Turn Your Podcast into a Lead Machine. It is November 19th, so that is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central. You do have to register. It will not be broadcast live on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else. You have to be inside the software with me to be able to watch the webinar. There is a replay, but you will not be able to get your questions answered after you learn how to turn your podcast into a lead machine. So, the idea there is that I'm going to tell you a lot more about the strategy around how to create a podcast that really supports your business. We're going to talk about some of the back end items that actually drive traction and how to create those and where to put them and what to do. So, if you are not yet registered for that, I will post a link in the comments below. But this has also been posted about on my profile. So if you're on LinkedIn, check out the events that I'm hosting, it's in there. Also, if you do get any of these freebies that I talked about during this live today, that adds you to my email list and you would hear about this webinar as well. Also, a visit to my website should produce a pop-up where you can sign up for the webinar. So, lots of options, lots of opportunities. If you need the direct link, just DM me. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for hanging out and learning the answers to these 5 questions today. I will see you next month.